The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us. It's officially 12 p.m. Mountain Standard Time, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay. Yes, hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this session this afternoon, second to last session of our 2021 Southwestern Idaho Peer Support Connection Conference. My name is Anna Guida. I'm the project manager of Empower Idaho. I'm super grateful that you all have chosen to join us this afternoon. We know there are so many Zoom webinars and trainings being tossed around these days, so we understand that Zoom can be, or virtual trainings can be a lot for the mind and for the eyes and the body. So we're just really grateful you're here with us, and we're super excited to have Lindsay Brown here, who I'm going to turn it over to in a moment. But first, just a few housekeeping pieces. Please, if you have questions throughout the session that are more related to like CEUs or technology, please feel free to email the two emails on the screen. I'll put them in the chat box in a moment. But there's my email is the aguida@Janice, and then our project assistant, Erin Moore, who is awesome, her email is there as well. So all things CEU, tech issues, or just questions about Empower Idaho, you can send to those two emails. If you have questions for Lindsay, our presenter, you can ask those in the question/chat box, which is in the control panel that should be on the side of your screen. You can collapse it and make it bigger, and there are a few options, and one of them is that question chat box. Feel free to place your questions in there or your comments, and I will be fielding those to Lindsay as she has time for them. So throughout the session, we'll pause a few moments, a few different times for questions to be fielded, and then at the end as well, there should be a few moments for questions. Lindsay's slides in PDF form have been added to our handouts section of the control panel. So if you click on the handouts little caret, you're able to download the slides if that's helpful for you. So feel free to print them off, follow through them as Lindsay's talking, whatever works for you. Okay, let's see. Lindsay, are you ready to join us? We're super excited.
I am.
Great. Awesome. Well, I'm handing it over to you. So get your screen set up.
All right. Clicked on that. Is it sharing the?
Yes, I see just the GoToWebinar. So just we'll pull the PowerPoint up real quick.
And that's right there. Oh.
Cool.
It is not going into that format though that has the notes available for me.
Okay.
We really did practice this,
We did,
everybody,
everyone. We did
like
practice.
5 minutes ago, and this did not happen.
Well, here, let's see, Lindsay, why don't you exit out of presentation mode on PowerPoint real quick, just so we can see the actual. Okay, great. So now let's try again to go to present and see if it. Let's just see what happens. Okay.
There we go.
Is that working?
Yep.
Okay, so you're gonna have to just switch the display settings again, and then we'll be good to go.
It has it on mine that it is only showing you
It's
the.
showing you like the editing page. Thanks for your patience, everyone. This happens all the time. So yeah, I'm seeing like your editing page with like all the slides on the side. So
Well, that is, it's not giving me an option to change that this time. I don't have it. It doesn't have the display settings available.
Let's just do it again, because it did pop up for a second and I saw that black screen again. So let's give it one more shot.
Okay. Stop.
I love when this happens. It's my favorite.
I know. Like I said, we really did practice this.
The story of our lives right now. So yeah, so I'm seeing the editing page again. So so can you click presentation mode? Is that working for you now?
Yes. Is that all you guys can see now?
Yes, we can just see the.
Okay.
That's what we want to see. So thank you, everybody, and Lindsay.
Perfect.
Okay.
Thank you guys all for your patience. Like I said, we did practice this so that wouldn't happen, and it still did. Anyways, my name is Lindsay Brown. I'm the lead certified peer recovery coach and peer support specialist at Peer Recovery Sports of Idaho. We are based in Boise, out of the Peer Wellness Center. There's my contact information on there. That'll also be at the end. But a little bit about me. When Anna first asked me if I wanted to present for this, I was like, sure, I think, and I didn't really know too much about what I wanted to do for a presentation. And then she was like, well, you can pick a topic. And when I was told that, I was like, absolutely yes. Like, I would love to talk about harm reduction. Harm reduction for me, it's something that's really, really important. I'm extremely passionate about it. I can't talk enough about harm reduction and how important it is. And I've really learned a lot about what it is over the past year myself. So I'm really excited to present this to everybody. And I hope you guys by the end of this are as passionate as I am about harm reduction and utilizing some of these techniques in your own practice. So the first thing we're going to talk about, what are our learning objectives for this? Like, we want to make sure that we have a clear definition of what harm reduction is and what it isn't. That part's really important, the what it isn't. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at the 8 principles of harm reduction, what they are and why they're so important. And then finally, we're going to talk about some strategies to implement this into our daily lives. And that's going to help to improve interactions with our colleagues, co-workers, people who work in this field, as well as with our peers, the population that we serve. It dramatically increases the connections and the communication between those people. So what is harm reduction? So like it says harm reduction, defined by the National Harm Reduction Coalition, is a set of practical strategies and ideas aimed at reducing consequences associated with substance use. Harm reduction is also a social movement, a movement for social justice built on a belief and respect for the rights of people who use substances. When I first started working on this presentation, I started to type this sentence in my notes, and it said, when people hear the words harm reduction, they think, and then I stopped and I was like, well, I shouldn't just assume. Let me ask some people. So I did a poll on my Facebook, and really, not to my surprise, a lot of people, especially the ones who don't work in the behavioral health field, had some really negative views about what harm reduction is. They said things like, you can't reduce the harm once it's there. Those scripts are just legal heroin. You're enabling people to keep using and engaging in these destructive behaviors. Which I think, those are all legitimate responses for people who have not done their own research, who have not actively gone out to seek, what is harm reduction? What is it really? So when you guys think of harm reduction, if you want to put this in the chat, when you think of harm reduction, what comes to mind for you? Another important thing is that there's no universal definition of what harm reduction is. We have this definition here according to the National Harm Reduction Coalition. You can find so many definitions for what it is. So what we're going to use as a definition for it is in really simple terms, it's a set of principles that are aimed at reducing problematic effects of behavior. It mainly does focus on substance use, but these principles, they can be applied to so many different things in life. We're going to talk about that a little bit later. And one of the things that I think is really important about harm reduction is that it's also this social justice movement. It's this movement that I really think it's the answer to the ongoing war on drugs, which I think a lot of us know isn't working, and hasn't been working for a really long time. We can't arrest our way out of like the current opioid crisis that we're in. It doesn't work, and harm reduction it's a solution to that. It's a solution to that that's going to keep people, out of prisons and in places where they could actually get some help to make some changes in their lives. In my opinion, substance use and mental health diagnosis are not crimes. Like they're not crimes. But the world we live in, they're looked at as crimes a lot. And I'm hoping with this presentation as well that that's going to change some people's minds. And Anna, I don't know if anybody put anything in the chat about what comes to mind for them with harm reduction, but if they did, if you'd like to share those.
Yeah, Lindsay, I'm not seeing any come in yet. I'm sure people are probably still pondering. But for me,
no worries.
Something that I thought for harm reduction is kind of like meeting people where they're at to help them get to a place in their life where they want to be and where they deserve to be.
Absolutely. And that's okay that there isn't much in the chat right now, because the next thing we are going to talk about was some everyday harm reduction, because there are everyday things that we all do that you probably never even thought that it was harm reduction. I know I didn't for some of these things. So again, if you guys have anything that you want to put in the chat of what you would consider to be everyday harm reduction, please do. Wearing your seatbelt, that's absolutely harm reduction. That's the first thing I do when I get in my car is I put my seatbelt on, and I don't just do it because it's the law. I do it too because if I'm driving down, the connector, somebody's going 60 miles an hour and a tire flies off in front of me and I need to slam on my brakes, and the person behind me rear ends me at 60 miles an hour, that seatbelt is probably going to really, really help. Like, okay, maybe it does break my collarbone, I get whiplash, something like that, but that seatbelt is saving me from flying out the windshield. I'm not going to go out the windshield, which that's much worse than, having a broken collarbone or bruised ribs or something like that from wearing a seatbelt. I will take those injuries over going through the windshield. Another thing for everyday harm reduction is protective sports equipment. I'm a huge sports fan. I love football. My favorite football player right now is, he plays for my team. It's Juju Smith-Schuster. I absolutely love him. And that guy gets hit, and he gets hit hard. I would be devastated if protective equipment didn't exist, because it probably really hurt my favorite wide receiver. And I like watching him play. Professional sports may not even exist anymore if we didn't have protective equipment that's going to help these players to play the game that they love, you know, to compete at a high level, but also keep them safe. Having a designated driver, probably not one that people would think that I would put on here, but this is a really important one. You know, if you're going to go out and you're going to be drinking alcohol, have a designated driver, call an Uber, get a Lyft. There's so many things, you know. I in my past, I was a drunk driver, and I can tell you from the personal experience of my DUIs, because my main thing was, oh, I don't want to call an Uber or a cab because, excuse me, I don't want to spend the money on it. Well, my personal experience with my DUIs, a $30 cab ride is much cheaper than having to spend $400 to reinstate my license, and another $2,000 on treatment, and another $1,000 on all these other things that you know comes along with that. You know, those are the consequences. That's just part of it. And obviously, you know, having a designated driver, you're not putting yourself or the community at risk of getting into a car accident, hitting somebody, you know, like worst case scenario, you know, actually taking somebody's life or your own by driving drunk. So having a designated driver is a very big thing in everyday harm reduction. Birth control and condoms. Condoms, absolutely. I was like, oh yeah, that's definitely harm reduction. But when I was researching about this and found birth control, I was like, how is birth control harm reduction? Because I really didn't know. So I just did a little bit of research in that, you know, as I looked more into it, you know, I learned birth control is 100% a harm reduction technique. Not only is it used for, you know, not having an unwanted pregnancy, it's also used, it reduces the risk of uterine cancer and ovarian cancer. In some cases, it reduces that risk by 50%. That's a pretty big number. It also reduces risks of anemia and ovarian cysts. I had no idea about those things. That's 100% harm reduction. Another one is nicotine patches. Whoops, I scrolled and it put the rest up, so we're just going to leave those ones up. But the nicotine patches, you know, if you've ever been a smoker and tried quitting, it's hard. I struggled for a very long time when I tried quitting smoking, and nicotine patches, if that's the route that somebody chooses to go, makes it a lot more manageable to actually quit smoking. And where the harm reduction piece comes into play is that it's a lot less of a health risk than smoking is. You know, the obvious reasons with smoking, you know, throat cancer, lung cancer, emphysema, COPD, different things like that. You know, the nicotine patches aren't going to have those effects. And the last one is wearing a mask, you know, and I put that one on there. I kind of debated for a little bit if I wanted to put that on there. People have mixed opinions about wearing a mask, and I respect all of the opinions that people have about wearing masks, not wearing masks, whatever. But if we're going just based on statistics, wearing masks reduces the transmission of disease. There's statistics there that show that, the science is there that's behind it. You know, they did it in 1918. We're doing it today, you know, with the day and age that we live in, with everything that's going on in the world. But even just to take it away from that, you know, doctors who are performing surgeries wear a face mask, and they wear those face masks for a couple of reasons. You know, one of them is to keep from passing germs to a patient. and their open wounds. And it's also to protect the doctor and their face from like anything that might spray out of their patient's body. So it's really a win-win situation. Now we're going to talk a little more about what harm reduction is and the principles of what harm reduction is. So this is like the real part of the presentation. I want to just make sure I had those everyday harm reduction things in there, so that everybody can see, oh wow, harm reduction is more than substance use or things with mental health, different things like that. It is a part of our everyday life, and we maybe just didn't realize it before. So principles of harm reduction. First one is acceptance. Drug use is a part of our world, and it has been for a really long time. It's been documented all the way back to 5000 BC that the inhabitants of Earth were planting vineyards to make wine. So it's not a new thing. Substance use is not new. It's been around for a very, very long time. And when we accept somebody who's using drugs, that's number one, the beginning of change within ourselves. Accepting that this is just a part of our world, we can actually focus on working to minimize negative consequences for drug use instead of ignoring that it exists or condemning people for using substances. This is it's the foundation for accepting a person who does use substances. And this one is acknowledgement. So people who use substances generally start out using by smoking or ingesting substances orally, and over time, as dependence grows, it gets harder and harder to achieve that same high, of, the very first time. So the first time is usually like, well, man, like this is great. And then over time, dependence happens and it becomes harder to achieve that. And so people typically use more to try and get that same effect. A lot of times that can turn into IV use, which is generally looked at as the most dangerous way to use drugs. People are at a much higher risk for contracting hepatitis C, HIV, and there's other negative health consequences like cardiovascular disease. IV use also greatly increases the possibility of an overdose. So we take all of those things and we combine it with that acceptance. Hey, this is a part of our world, and we acknowledge that it's there. We can help somebody to start to make changes in their life if they want to. And it's also about acknowledging too that, some forms of drug use are safer than others. If somebody is IV using, it may be something to talk about of like, okay, so if you're IV using, are you using the same syringe each time? Are you sharing that with other people? And acknowledging like, I accept you for who you are and what's going on in your life right now and what you are doing. And I want to provide support to you for those things. And that really helps to bring any power differential that may be there. It really, really takes it from like here to like here, because that person is actually being seen and actually being heard with what they want to do and what they don't want to do. And that's a game changer, especially working as a peer. Next thing is that it establishes quality. So I'm going to utilize SAMHSA's definition of recovery here. And SAMHSA's definition of recovery is a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. I love that definition. Because that definition, if we're talking about drug use, it does not say one thing about being abstinent from drugs or alcohol. It doesn't say that. It talks about improving your health and wellness living a self-directed life, and reaching your full potential. Harm reduction is a great place to start to do that, because somebody might not see any of their potential with where they're at, and then you come in with using these harm reduction techniques, and they might start to see it and be like, wow, like this person they're not judging me. They're not telling me what to do. They're asking me, where am I at right now? And what do I want to do about it? And I love that, you know, as peers, that's what we do. You know, we don't tell people what to do. Probation officers do. I'm not a probation officer, and I don't think I want to be one. I'd probably get in trouble, because I would tell people, hey, you don't want to quit using right now, that's okay, but let's talk about what it looks like to safely use. I don't know if probation and parole would be on my side with that. I really don't know. I hope they would be, but you know, I don't work for them. I'm not a probation officer. I'm a peer. I'm a recovery coach, and I'm a peer support specialist. You know, and there's no specific criteria for what successful is and what isn't successful. People get to choose that for themselves. The next thing about harm reduction, and this one's really important to me, is that it's not judgmental and it's not coercive. You know, we want to support anybody who wants to reduce harm that's happening in their life. You know, and we don't judge somebody if they don't want to go the route of total abstinence. But what we would rather do is encourage the positive choices that they're making for their overall well-being and health. You know, so an example of that is if somebody's IV using drugs and they're wanting to participate in a syringe service program so that they can have sterile injection materials and a sharps container to dispose of those used materials, we should encourage that. You know, we shouldn't say, oh, you can't do that, you need to do this, this, and this. It's not our recovery, it's theirs. It's their journey, and it gets to start where they want it to start. You know, we don't coerce people into abstinence. We don't coerce people into treatment. We provide education along with the steps that they've already chosen to start getting healthier. The next principle we're going to talk about is people having a voice. There's a lot of different types of programs out there to help people who are using drugs to start making changes in their life. Those programs should 100% be taking input from the people who are participating in them. I think it's great that we have all of these different programs, and you know, it wants to be set up, you know, here's A, here's B, here's C, all of these different things. That's great. To truly help people, you need to ask them what their thoughts are on how a program can be improved, how it can be implemented. How is this working or not working in your life, so we can make different adjustments to those things. The people that we serve in our communities, they know what's going on out there. They know what's working and what's not working, and getting that input from them is so important, you know, and it also really empowers people. It empowers people for them to have a voice, to be able to say, this is what I want to do, and this is what I think is going to work best. And you know, if there's one thing that I have learned in the years that I've been working as a recovery coach and peer support specialist, and really even in my own recovery, if I don't get to define what my recovery looks like, I'm not going to do it. If somebody else is always telling me what it's supposed to look like and what I'm supposed to do, I'm not going to listen, because that might not be what I want to do. So supporting what somebody wants to do for their own recovery, and whatever that looks like, without judgment, it's going to increase the odds that that individual is actually going to enter into recovery. The next thing is, seeks to empower, kind of what it, that last piece that I was just talking about, creating a community that's going to empower people who are using drugs to speak up and share their stories. That's a huge piece of repairing communities and helping other people. Encouraging them to share, hey, what's worked for you? What hasn't worked for you? That's going to help us as peers to provide appropriate resources to somebody who maybe they're at the beginning of their journey of recovery, or even if it's somebody, they've been around for a little while, and they've just kind of been doing everything everybody else has told them, and they're miserable. Empowering them to live that self-directed life that SAMHSA talks about in their definition of recovery, that can be a real game changer for people, and it can drastically improve their life. It also help to encourage people to share amongst themselves in the relationships that they already have. It's okay to talk about recovery. It doesn't have to be a secret if you don't want it to. Some people don't want to talk about it, that's fine. If you've ever met me, I'm like a walking billboard for recovery. I have like shirts that just have sober blasted on them. If somebody asks me, I tell them, and I want to tell them, I want them to know. And part of that is because I want to help to reduce the stigma in our communities. The next one is recognizing vulnerabilities. So there's no two people have the same story. Are there similarities? Yes, but they're never exactly the same. We want to recognize that each person has their own unique journey, and that's also comes with their own unique vulnerabilities. Things like poverty, past and present traumas, race, social isolation, social inequities. Those are all potential barriers of somebody actually achieving their own goals. It wouldn't be appropriate to suggest to somebody, let's apply and get you into a sober living facility if 100% sobriety is not their goal. We don't want to do that just to get them housing, because they're probably not going to achieve their goal in sober living if being 100% sober isn't their goal. So we want to be able to have other resources to look into. And we need to recognize those vulnerabilities. We need to know what they are. One of the main things as recovery coaches, peer support specialists, family support partners, is to help remove potential barriers. We can't do that if we don't know what those barriers are. So we need to talk about vulnerabilities. And the other aspect of it too is when talking about those vulnerabilities, we need to recognize our own bias that comes along with that, because we all have bias. I would love to say that I don't, but I do. I have bias, and I need to know when that bias is coming up so that I'm not putting that bias in the way of helping somebody to remove those barriers. The last thing, it does not attempt to minimize. So with that, talking, again, specifically about drugs right now, harm reduction is not about minimizing the real risks and the real harms that come with drug use. It's not there to minimize that, and it's not, despite what a lot of people think, it's not enabling people to continue to use. The goal of it, is it's in the name. It's in the name, harm reduction. It is to reduce harm. And it's an evidence-based practice where you're putting the individual's goals as the priority, and that may or may not include total abstinence. So something with that, an example if you're using a harm reduction approach, if you have somebody who has gone from drinking 10 alcoholic drinks a day down to 6 drinks on 5 days of the week, that's a successful outcome. And you're not minimizing the harm that's there. You're just recognizing, look at this progress you've made. You went from 6 drinks a day or 10 drinks a day down to 6 over the course of 5 days. Like, that's a big deal. That's a great place to start. And that's something that, you know, it shows a person that they actually can change. You know, the ultimate goal for an individual is total abstinence. That's a great stepping stone and a motivator that change is possible. Especially if their goal is total abstinence. You know, you want to make sure that that's being done in a safe way, right? So we know with alcohol that it can be very, very dangerous and fatal to just quit drinking, to just stop. So using a harm reduction approach, like this example, cutting down from 10 drinks a day down to 6 over the course of a week, that's going to be a lot less scary, number one, for the person, but it's also going to be a lot safer if they're, you know, deciding like, I don't want to go into a detox facility, because that's their choice if they want to do that or not. This is something that is going to help to keep them safer. Does anybody have any questions about the principles of harm reduction? If you want to put those in the chat as well. We're going to go to the next slide, and I'll check in with Anna in just a minute about those questions, if there are any.
Yeah, I don't see questions yet, so we'll probably roll in since we just prompted. But
Perfect.
I have 2 comments. The first one was kind of from your first question you posed about what do you think when you think of harm reduction? And someone here mentioned, when I think of harm reduction, I think of a collaborative, person-centered discussion. Which I love that. And
yes.
then when you said examples of harm reduction or everyday harm reduction, someone responded, positive self-talk.
Yes, I love that positive self-talk. That's a really big one. You know, that can really help people to get motivated. You know, we can say some pretty mean and negative things to ourselves. I know I'm guilty of that. You know, but when I start to implement, positive self-talk, I'm generally a nicer person to be around. Those are great examples. Thank you for putting those in the chat. So we talked quite a bit about substance use with those first couple of slides. And you may be asking, well, what about mental health? Can these principles be applied to mental health, or are there a separate set of principles for mental health? You know, just like substance use, mental health is a part of our world. You know, and there's 1 in 5 adults in the US today live with some type of mental health diagnosis. That's 20% of the population, which translates to roughly 51 million people. That's a big number to pretend like mental health doesn't exist, or to tuck it away in the corner and keep it in the closet because we don't want anybody to see this. Stigma is very well alive when it comes to mental health, and it's hard. You know, it's kind of like so okay. So when you like break your arm, people are like, "Oh my gosh, what happened? I'm so sorry. Is there anything I can do? Can I cook you some meals? Can I get you a ride? Do you need me to watch the kids, cut the grass?" All of these different things. And they always want to sign your cast. But what about when our brain is hurt? They usually say things like, well, you should be grateful for the things that you do have. Stop worrying. This one's my personal favorite. Get over it. I never thought that. I never thought, wow, yeah, just get over it, Lindsay. If it was that easy, I would. So the same principles that we talk about harm reduction for substance use, they are all the same when it comes to mental health. You know, just like substance use, mental health is a part of our world. And it can be scary for people to accept that. It can be scary for people to acknowledge that. When I received my mental health diagnosis, two major things happened. The first one, I felt very relieved. And I felt relieved because I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not just crazy. And the second, I was really scared because I didn't want people to know. I didn't want them to know, because what if they thought, oh my gosh, she's just crazy. Crazy is a stigmatizing word. It's not a good one. We joke around about it, different things like that, but it's a very stigmatizing word. And, you know, for me, stigma definitely got the best of me, because I was not going to discuss my mental health unless I could use it to my advantage, you know, and I would use it to my advantage if I would do something just completely out of character and just say things like, oh, well, you know, I'm bipolar, what do you expect? And that was how I would try and get out of things, or explain the out of character things that I was doing. I was stigmatizing myself. Not only was I stigmatizing myself, I was stigmatizing other people who live with the same mental health diagnosis. Once I accepted that, hey, my brain just makes chemicals in a different way, it utilizes those chemicals in a different way, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm me. This is a part of me. It's not, I don't define myself by that. It's just something that I live with. You know, so once you can acknowledge that, you can start to do something about it if you want to. You know, and for us as peers, that acknowledging it really helps to see the person who's in front of us, who's living with a diagnosis. They're able to be seen, and we can see them for who they are and not just their mental health diagnosis. I don't want to be labeled by my diagnosis. I want to be labeled as Lindsay, because that's who I am. You know, and again, establishing quality. We're going to go back to Sam's definition of recovery: a process of change through which individuals improve their health and wellness, live a self-directed life, and strive to reach their full potential. Quality of life is the focus here. And any improvements that somebody can make for themselves that's going to increase their quality of life, that's a success story. Again, you know, being non-judgmental, non-coercive. Yes, medications can help, because they can. When I was first diagnosed, I was coerced into taking medication. It was not what I wanted to do. But people in my life were very judgmental. And so the deal was, you are going to take this medication or else. And I don't really want to find out what or else meant. You know, so the medication that I was on, here's the thing, it worked. It worked. I'd be lying if I said that it didn't work, because it did. It managed all my symptoms. However, I could not think clearly. I really was just tired all the time. I wanted to sleep all day, every day. And I absolutely lost all interest in the things that brought me joy in my life. I didn't want to play softball anymore. I didn't want to ride my bike. I didn't want to go hiking. I didn't want to do any of those things. And that's what happened with that first medication that I was on. And finally, I made a decision and just said, I'm not going to take this medication anymore just because someone else wants me to. I'm going to do something else. So when we're non-judgmental and non-coercive, people get to make their own health decisions, and we should be supportive of that. You know, and just like in the story that I just shared, I was using my voice to take control of my own life and my own health journey. Because as I said before, if people don't get to define what their recovery looks like, they're probably not going to do it. That applies to mental health as well. You know, and one of the ways that we can help people to have their voice is to just offer support and encouragement, and and share our stories. You know, that's how we empower people. You know, we share our stories. Here's what it was like, and here's what I did, and here's what it's like now. People can relate to that, and it can give them hope. And again, you know, with vulnerabilities, kind of the same as I already said, you know, each person has their own unique journey with recovery. So they have their own unique vulnerabilities, and we need to take those into account and learn what those vulnerabilities are so that we can provide potential suggestions that might be solutions for somebody. And same thing with substance use. You know, we're not trying to minimize the risks that can come along with mental health. So like switching back to that story, that medication that I was on, when I stopped taking it, I would love to tell you guys that I went and got a different medication, but I didn't. And I was unmedicated. And as I was unmedicated, now that I look back on it, it really doesn't surprise me that I was arrested. Not because I think mental health is a crime, but because of what I was doing. There were very illegal things, you know, so I should have been arrested. And that happened multiple times, because every time I'd go back to jail, I'd get back on that medication because they forced me to. Then I'd get out, I'd stop taking it, and then I'd end up back in jail, and it was just this vicious cycle, you know. And it wasn't until somebody pointed it out to me, hey, here's what's going on, like, do you want to do something about that? And they didn't minimize what was happening, you know. So we don't want to minimize those things. We want to have an open conversation about them. Why should we use harm reduction? First thing, meeting someone where they're at. And I know we all say this. We all say, I meet people where they're at, but do we really do it? Do we really do that? Because if we do, when somebody comes to us and says, I don't want to quit using, or I don't want to take medication, we really need to be supportive of that and say, okay, what do you want to do? We need to truly meet them where they're at. Decreases disease prevalence. I didn't know what that meant at first. I had to Google it, and Google didn't help. So I had a friend, you know, just tell me what this was in fifth grader terms, you know. And a really great example of this is with decreasing disease prevalence is by utilizing sterile syringe programs, so that you're not using the same syringe over again, so that you're not sharing syringes with somebody. It lowers the risk of contracting different diseases and improves individual health. That should always be a focus, is improving somebody's individual health, however that looks, what they want to do. That's how we meet them where they're at. That's how we implement harm reduction. It also improves community health. Speaking specifically to drug use, it improves community health through having syringe service programs that give people sharps containers so that they can put that used equipment in those sharps containers and safely dispose of them. So then, you know, our sanitation workers aren't getting accidental needle sticks. It also increases opportunities to seek treatment. Sometimes people just don't know what's out there. They don't know what's available. And so when we're utilizing harm reduction techniques, and, you know, we have things like syringe service programs, and we're meeting somebody where we're at, it opens the door to have a conversation, to say, hey, have you ever thought about this? Because maybe they haven't, or maybe they have and they just don't know how to do it. It allows us to help them to potentially seek treatment. This one is kind of a given, I think. Decreasing fatal and non-fatal drug overdoses. There's a lot of research on this. I would love to go into all of it, but I probably won't be able to, because it would take like 2 hours. It's just known, the statistics show that harm reduction decreases fatal and non-fatal drug overdoses. It also helps people to learn about their own behavior, to discuss modifiable health behaviors that can allow that person to assess their own risk regarding their use. You know, some examples of that would be not using alone. That's more dangerous than with others. When using with others, using in a rotation so that everybody's not using at the same time. So if somebody, you know, does experience a drug overdose, somebody can give them Narcan. And the last one is hope, compassion, and love. That's what we do as peers. We're compassionate, we're loving, you know, we want to instill hope in people, that things can be better if they want them to be better. So some strategies to implement this. The first one is motivational interviewing. I would take a guess that most people have been through a motivational interviewing training. If you haven't, I highly recommend it. It is a game changer. And again, motivational interviewing, I could talk all day about that. But really, down to its core, is designed to empower people to change by bringing out their own meaning and their own capacity for change. Creating a wellness plan. So a wellness plan is looking at all areas of wellness, the 7 dimensions: physical, emotional, intellectual, social, spiritual, environmental, and occupational. Some of those things people may have never thought about in their life. And creating a wellness plan with them can help them to set goals that they want to achieve to improve their own wellness. The last one is person-centered language. This is like a super hot button issue for me. Person-centered language is so important. This is like a level 1 harm reduction technique. Saying people who use drugs as opposed to addicts. Saying someone who uses alcohol instead of an alcoholic. Instead of saying somebody is being resistant, that they're not ready for something. They're not resistant, they're not ready. I want to talk a little bit more about person-centered language, just because a lot of times people really don't know what it is. It's language that puts people first. It's about respecting a person's dignity, worth, and uniqueness, and their strengths. And it really gives us the ability to see the person first rather than their disease. People are more than their illness. They're more than the challenges that they face in their life. And when we put them first, we can really see who they are as a person and offer real solutions to help them. Focuses on an individual's personal recovery and unique strengths. Everybody has strengths. Everybody has strengths, right? A person who may be selling drugs that is looking to change their life because they don't want to do that anymore, they got strengths. They can sell. Help them get a job selling cars. As a salesman of some sort, they can utilize the strengths that they have. It's just putting it into a different capacity. And then most importantly, it respects the individual. We need to be respecting people, especially people who are living with mental health and living with substance use. Those two things, people get stigmatized so much. And a lot of people don't respect them as individuals to make decisions for themselves, or they don't trust them. When we use person-centered language, it is showing that person respect, and it is showing them, I trust you. I trust you to do this. I know you can do this. And it instills that hope that we want to give them. So that's just a few of the techniques to implement harm reduction into our practice, into our daily lives. And I would highly encourage everybody to, if you don't know too much about person-centered language, ask people, find trainings. It will change how you look at the peers that you're working with, and you're going to have a very different response to them. And along with that, this is my contact information. So if you want to learn more about person-centered language as well, I have some really great information on that. please feel free to contact me either by email or my cell phone. Either one of those works. I would love to continue this conversation with people about harm reduction. Thank you.
Yeah. Lindsay, thank you so much for your presentation. I really enjoyed it, and it seems like your attendees did as well. You're receiving some nice messages in the chat. So super grateful for you, Lindsay, and for your time and your expertise and sharing your own personal story as well. It means a lot. So we do have a few more minutes. Well, I mean, we can just kind of hang here for a little bit in case you have any questions. Folks, you feel free to send them through the chat. Again, Lindsay shared her email address, which it looks like your screen is, it's now very tiny. I can't really see the email address.
Oh no.
I will share hers in the chat.
I clicked one thing.
So yeah, please feel free to, utilize Lindsay's email address. It's awesome that she's sharing it with all of us. A quick note is that there will be an evaluation that kind of pops up that we just encourage everyone to fill out. It helps us determine, future training sessions, future suggested presenters, and also you can let us know like your thoughts about the presentation, and we read those closely, and we also share them with our presenters as well. So yes, appreciate you all being here. Lindsay, again, thank you. I'm sure we'll be working with you in the future, so check your email.
Yes, I would love to. Thank you, Anna.
Awesome. Yeah, well, I don't see any questions coming through yet, so if anyone who's on this session, any questions come to mind later, again, reach out to Lindsay or to myself or someone else on my team, and we will answer your question the best we can. Additionally, CEUs will be mailed out via email, If that doesn't work for you, please contact us and we'll send you a hard copy. But those should be to you by May 7th. You're getting lots of thanks, Lindsay, in the chat, just so you know, and you did an awesome job. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, if there's no questions, I guess we can just wrap it up for the day. But again, have a good day, everyone. Happy weekend.